The video game rush is in full swing this week, with Sony's State of Play stream not only revealing a new trailer for The Last of Us Part 2, but also giving us a release date. The Fallout 76 drama isn't going down without taking thousands of gamers with it. Call of Duty content exclusivity stirs the ire of gamers everywhere, and more in this week's edition of The Rundown. Fallout 76 has had a myriad of issues since launch, whether that be with the game itself or the merchandise that was heavily and falsely advertised to consumers anxious to get their hands on the game. Late last week, the United States Consumer Product Safety Commission issued a recall for the wearable GameStop exclusive Power Armor helmet, identical to the one seen in the game. The CPSC website states that the polyester cotton fabric contained in the helmet may be a breeding ground for harmful mold that can cause respiratory infections, and is especially harmful to those with compromised immune systems or are prone to mold allergies. Emails were sent to all consumers that own the helmet with instructions on how to proceed in sending it back. Like I said at the top of this thing, Fallout 76 doesn't intend to go quietly into the night and never be heard from again, especially when it comes to merchandising issues. Looking back on the whole duffel bag debacle, something that went on for quite some time, this new problem transcended false advertising to straight up safety hazard. It remains to be seen who is exactly at fault for this, GameStop or Bethesda, but I can imagine any future merch with Bethesda's name on it are now on the blacklist of gamers everywhere. This entire situation is like a train wreck. You know it's bad, but for some reason you just can't look away. Earlier this week, Sega held a live stream also known as Sega Nama, which is hosted by Sega CCO Toshihiro Nagoshi, most notably known for his work on the Yakuza franchise, and his co-host, Ayana Tsubaki. The streams typically talk about the biggest upcoming titles from the publisher, and at times dive into offhand topics as well. This month's stream had Nagoshi talking about the Future Division Awards for this year's TGS, and how he's not disappointed that Yakuza 7 didn't win. He also answered a question about a topic that he brought up in the past, where Hideo Kojima himself talked about collaborating on a project. He delved further into this by mentioning that they talked about what roles they would take on the project, and he then joked about how they probably gave up on the idea of making a game since they both tend to be heavily involved in every aspect of their projects, and that maybe they should do a cooking show together instead. I'll admit to being slightly disappointed that the idea of them coming together for a project is pretty much off the table. I can imagine that this probably came about after some sort of butting of heads during a discussion. Thinking about how emotionally driven Nagoshi's stories are in conjunction with Kojima's affinity for telling crazy, mind-boggling tales, it could really turn into something special. Regardless, even if it wasn't a game, I could see myself being excited for whatever idea they managed to come up with together, cooking show or not. Also this week, Sony's State of Play livestream promised new info about upcoming games such as Medieval and Modern Warfare, but the heavy hitter that everyone was eagerly anticipating was more information about The Last of Us Part 2. Something that was hinted at nearly a week in advance by Naughty Dog themselves via Twitter. Not only was a new trailer shown, showing some rather juicy details about Ellie's motivations and the themes the game intends to dive into, but they finally revealed a February 21st, 2020 release date, almost 7 years after the release of the original. They also announced an Ellie edition of the game, which is now sold out, and a collector's edition. I'm still on the fence about whether or not the first game really needed a sequel, but after watching some videos from some of my favorite gaming publications, I have a somewhat decent understanding of why they decided to do so. They simply have another story to tell, and themes they wanted to try their hands at that haven't been done well in a video game before. For that, I'm willing to give them a chance to wow me in the way that the first game did. And it looks like they finally put one of the biggest fan theories to rest about what sparked Ellie's thirst for revenge this time around. Yes, Joel is still alive. In our final news story of the week, something that also came out of Sony's State of Play livestream was a new trailer for the Call of Duty Modern Warfare reboot. The trailer featured fan favorite Captain Price and one of the most edgy themed trailers I've seen in a while. But what stirred up the ire of gamers everywhere was the announcement of the return of Spec Ops mode, and that it will be timed exclusive to the PS4 for a whole year. That means other platforms will be one mode short until October of 2020. Gamers sought out justice by sending their ire over to Infinity Ward, who attempted to extinguish the outrage by asking fans to think of the developers behind the game. It's a shame that this is still an ongoing problem in a world where gamers just want to get everything that a game has to offer in that initial purchase, and not to worry about missing out on something based on their platform of choice. It was battle enough to get Sony to finally open its doors on cross-platform multiplayer, but to see Sony turn around and pull this just comes off as seedy and underhanded. So I can definitely understand the outrage, but like I always say, outrage must be directed at the right individuals for change to happen. In this case, it seems very likely that it was an Activision and Sony deal, not Infinity Ward. Especially when you look at the history of a game like Destiny that had PlayStation exclusive gear and missions for, you guessed it, an entire year after each game's release. Now that Bungie has gone independent from Activision, Shadowkeep has no trace of platform exclusive content, which goes to show who was pulling the strings on those deals. And with that, we've reached the conclusion of this week's edition of The Rundown. As always, if you guys enjoyed the show, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to see content like this and more. Also be sure to hit that bell icon to get notified on every new video. News sources and social links are included in the description for the curious. And as always, this is Corrupt Ronin telling you to stay sharp, assassins, and I'll see you next time.